Okay, let me move this. Okay, so our project was titled The Effect of Social Media Use on Mental Health. Our project studied a data set consisting of attributes such as an individual's age, education level, social media use, anxiety levels, et cetera, et cetera. And we wanted to determine to what extent does this person's social media use impact their anxiety and well-being levels. Our hypothesis is that if a person uses social media more, their well-being levels will go down and their anxiety will go up. Now I'm going to pass it off to one of our members, Henrietta, who's going to get us started with the first thing we did with our data set. Henrietta, if you want to take it away.
Okay, the first thing we did was analyze the difference in effects of social media on stress averages for different sexes. We started by separating the female and male data sets from the larger set into two separate sets. And then using those charts, we separately plotted the female and male data set using Plotly. We used media in hours per day for the x-axis and anxiety score for the y-axis. And on two other plots, we used the well-being score on the y-axis instead. We then found the line of best fit for the two plots and made two correlation heat maps using Seaborn. We separately plotted the female and male data set to see if a person's sex had any impact on how social media affected anxiety and well-being scores. We then found the line of best fit for these two plots to determine if there was any actual difference between the two sexes. This would show that if a sex had an impact on our hypothesis that media negatively affects your mental health. We made correlation charts to see if there were any more differences too. Our plot maps and line of best fit showed that there's a positive correlation between media use and a person's anxiety score, and that a person's sex does affect the relationship between media and a person's average anxiety. We found that the female line of best fit, as stated there, has a steeper slope than the male line of best fit, stated again.
Okay, and here's some of our visuals, the code we wrote, and also the graphs we generated. We create a few graphs for this section. Thank you, Henrietta. Now we're going to pass it off to another one of our members, Jasmine, who's going to talk about a bar graph we generated. So Jasmine, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, so for the next graph, we used the pandas module to construct a bar chart illustrating the average daily media among different locations, so rural, and then there was urban municipal areas, and then there was metropolitan cities. We used Plotly to express the chart where the habitat was the independent variable and the average media usage was the dependent variable. And then we colored the graph by a scale of increasing media usage. We wanted to analyze the media usage across different locations to find out if these habitats people were in had a major factor on the daily media usage that they had. We thought it would be interesting to compare the average media usage across different types of communities, because it would make sense that people would use technology more often in a setting that doesn't have a lot of activities or places to go. So areas like rural areas would have a higher media usage, and that was kind of our prediction or thinking before actually building the chart. And then based on the bar graph, the highest average of media usage was in rural locations, the next highest was in urban municipal areas, and the lowest average was in metropolitan cities. And although these numbers don't prove to be very drastic from one another, they do differentiate across locations. Rural areas are usually communities with less buildings, so it would make sense that people tend to rely on social media and technology, both for communication and entertainment, where areas like urban municipal areas, which is kind of a mixture of city and suburban areas, and metropolitan areas are more condensed for population, as well as have more activities and buildings outside of technology. So this data kind of explains how locations can affect the average media usage across the population.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Jasmine. Now we're going to hand it off to another one of our members, Dakota, who's going to talk about the scatter plot that he helped generate.
All right, so we created a scatter plot between media usage and anxiety. So we used Plotly to create a scatter plot between media usage, which is X, and anxiety, which is Y. And we compared the two to see if there's a relationship between social media usage and anxiety. The relationship between media usage and anxiety was represented by a line with the equation y equals 0.93x plus 4.38.
Okay,
just a little more.
Here's the graphs we generated for this section in our scatter plot. Next, we're going to pass it off to another one. Another one of our members, who's, oh my God, I'm blanking on this. Audrey. That's right. I just put the first letter of their name on the side. I thought I would remember it, but I'm having a temporary lapse of memory. Next, Audrey, would you like to explain would you like to take away and explain what you did?
Based on data we had collected and stored in Pandas modules, we created a plotly scatter plot that compared the age of an individual to their daily media usage. We predicted that media usage would go down as age went up, which would be evident in our scatter plot if there was a negative correlation line. The scatter plot showed a weak but still present negative correlation of about negative 0.05. The data confirmed that as age goes up, media usage per day decreases. And based on our other findings from the media use versus anxiety plot, which shows that media use and anxiety is positively correlated, this may attribute to why younger generations, especially females, are dealing with exponentially more mental health issues compared to the past.
All right. Thank you, Audrey. That was amazing. And thank you for saving our presentation there. Next, we're going to move on to another one of our members, Zackary, who's going to talk about the relationship that he wanted to study with our data. So Zackary, if you want to take it away.
To find the relationship between social media use and a person's well-being score, we used Plotly to create a scatter plot that compared the two. As well as going more in depth and creating 2 more scatter plots for male and female data, we wanted to see how the amount of time spent on social media affects a person's well-being score. The created scatter plot showed a weak negative correlation between social media use and well-being score. The data shows that as the amount of hours spent on social media per day increased, well-being score decreased. Also that females' well-being score was more negatively affected by more time spent on social media than males.
Okay, and we have the graph for this section. And finally, we're going to pass it off to Geoffrey, who's going to talk about the relationship that he wanted to study. So Geoffrey, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, so in this section, we compared people's well-being scores to their anxiety scores, and we used a Plotly module to generate a scatter plot graph to plot well-being scores against anxiety scores. We also generated a line of best fit to show the average effect anxiety has on well-being. While it did not directly pertain to our hypothesis, we thought that it would be interesting and useful to see how big of a factor anxiety was on overall well-being. Our data showed that anxiety and overall well-being have a loose inverse correlation. This means that while anxiety does have a negative effect on a person's well-being, there are other factors that cumulatively affect someone's well-being more.
Thank you, Geoffrey. I love how Geoffrey, we talked about correlation coefficients and coefficient of determination. So I loved how in this last section, Geoffrey interpreted the coefficient of determination to imply that there are other factors that affect this relationship. So I did mention that in this course we were not going to focus on machine learning, but this group pulled a Hail Mary, and we were able to create a small predictive model. So we created a classification model that would predict a person's well-being category based on 6 input features we took from our data set. We thought it'd be interesting to see if we could apply machine learning to this problem of understanding how the environment impacts a person's well-being. And to do this, we implemented 4 classification models: k-nearest neighbors, support vector machines, naive Bayes, and decision trees. Our models had an average score of 44%, which seems low, but is still better than selecting at random, given that there were 3 output labels for the well-being category that they belong to. So here's our code. Here's our code for that. We got to learn and use the scikit-learn module, which I thought was awesome. And finally, we're going to hand it off to Audrey, who's going to conclude our presentation. So Audrey, let me get my screen situated, and if you want to take it away.
To wrap it up, our findings support our hypothesis that if a person uses social media more, their well-being score will go down and their anxiety score will go up. Our data indicates a positive relationship between social media usage and anxiety, as well as a negative relationship between social media usage and well-being score. In addition, we found that females undergo a greater rate of change in their anxiety levels as they add more social media usage than males. I think our group did a really good job of learning and doing beyond what was expected, and thank you for listening.
Yeah, sure. Can we get a round of applause for the prestigious Pythons and all the work they did this week?